Howdy everybody, welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. This one's going to be a slightly different video, and I just want to reflect on a few things from CGC from the last year and take a quick kind of overview of how I've viewed a few of the changes that they've made. And so to take a quick snapshot in review here, if you teleport back about a year, we had the emergence of Reholdergate, which was a kind of a scandal in the community where somebody was taking CGC graded books, either changing out the comic in the inner well or changing out the label above them, sending them back to CGC, and in that process of putting them in for a reholder or a mechanical error, kind of unclear which, we know that they were able to take books that either were qualified or did not have Mark Jeweler inserts or were a different grade, and basically upgrade them to CGC. So a couple of the books were Hulk 181s that had the Marvel value stamp removed, which would normally cause that book to earn a green qualified grade, and then they were upgraded to universal grades, which of course they should not be if they're missing the coupon. A couple of the other ones were very high grade books with the Mark Jeweler's insert, or they were swapped with books that didn't have the Mark Jeweler's insert, or however which way it went. And there was a list of things that CGC had posted that people could check against their collections, and indeed a couple of people had messaged me that their books were affected, which was kind of a big bummer. So that was kind of a big issue last winter. And then fast forward to kind of some of the blowback and pushback from the Reholdergate. You know, Matt Nelson on an interview with one of the, other influencers, the 99 Noonstand, announced that they were going to do a 9.9 pre-screen. And I think that got some pushback from the community because up until now you were not able to pre-screen 9.9 books, and 9.8 books were and still are kind of the gold standard for CGC. Since then, we've seen a massive uptick in a number of 9.9 books that have hit the census, and a number of the other YouTube commentators kind of have a running track of that. So I think Ryan at Automatic Comics has been kind of probably the leader in keeping track of, the new 9.9s that come out. And if you follow some of those videos and some of the people who've commented on them, again, I will stick to my prior statement that I published when that came out, which was good grief, CGC, 9.9s really. And the reason for that is it does appear to be completely random. And in that video, if you go back, I'll try to drop that down below. There were a lot of, I would say, skepticisms that I have to how 9.9s had been evaluated before this. And one of the challenges I had was hoping somebody would take their 9.9 book, crack it, send it back to CGC, and prove that, they're getting 9.8s out of these 9.9 books. Of course, because some collectors really want to pay a premium for that label, and I will attest to this day, that's all you're doing is you're paying a lot of money for a different number on the top of your book. I don't really think that they're objectively different comic books, that it's not a real difference. If it were a real difference, you should be able to reproducibly get that grade from CGC, and since you can't, it's basically made up or arbitrary. And I think that that's very unfortunate. In my opinion, that at the time was a cash grab to try to massively increase the number of modern books. You can imagine collectors taking shelves, walls, or boxes full of prior 9.8 books, hoping to crack them and get some 9.9s out of them. Then we had Bananagate Midsummer, and I had another video on that very clearly showing the banana shape that the comic books were in. The orders I've gotten back since then, I've had multiple books that have, I would say, a lighter banana bend, but the slabs still have been feeling distorted and warped. And I would say they do not feel like slabs did a year ago. They feel bulging, they feel stressed, they feel very awkward. And so I don't think CGC has actually fixed the banana problem to our liking. That being said, they've also suffered a number of defeats in the courtroom, and you can follow, again, other YouTube people to comment on the massive lawsuits that CGC has, had to deal with. Both, trying to address some of the, well, they also had an employee stealing books and swapping books out, and so it turns out one of my clients actually had one of those books as well, which is really, really unfortunate. So that was a whole separate mini scandal that came out as part of the Reholdergate scandal, as part of a lawsuit that was filed against the former employee in Florida. And then there was a different comic book presser, True Restorer, you know, Peaceville, Color Touch, those sorts of things, who filed a defamation suit against CGC and won that case. All year in review, I would say that that is not a great look for a company that is supposed to be a world-class entity in comic book grading. Now, none of that is new as of the recording of this video, but what is recording, I would say, is diminishing customer service. And part of the reason that I feel compelled to put this video out there is very recent experiences. So if you are a longtime submitter, you probably have multiple orders in the CGC queue. You know, it takes them a while to receive those books, get checked in, scheduled for grading, go through grading, then you have grading, encapsulating, imaging stage, quality control, and eventually they ship. I have books that were mailed in January that were checked in, or sorry, not January, July, that were checked in August. Now, for those of you that remember, there was a big promotion about vintage comics back in July. It was a nice discount that they offered at the time, specifically on the vintage tier. And vintage tier, for the record, isn't really vintage. It's the only way, it's kind of the main pathway for books that are pre-1975. So if you've got a beaten up Golden Age comic, if you've got, you know, lower grade Amazing Spider-Man something something from the 60s, they're all going to go the vintage tier, and that's gonna just be how they go through. Those books have been sitting there, and they should have come home based on about where they were mid-October, early October. I was thinking early October. Then the CGC date that they, you know, on their page, they estimate the turnaround time. So if you go to the CGC webpage, you can go services and fees, and the services and fees, it'll show you how much it is for a specific tier for a comic book, and then it'll give you the estimated turnaround time. Now, that was 20 days for modern and 30 days for vintage books for the majority of the year. Walkthrough tier, or unlimited grading tier as it's called now, has really kind of sat in that 3 to 5 day window, and then they kind of have this weird hybrid high value tier that kind of sandwiches them. Anyway, the modern and vintage are probably the two biggest ones. The vintage is the one we're going to talk about here because that's the one I was following the most, because I do a lot of, you know, lower Golden Age books. We'll do, you know, Silver Age comic books, some, you know, early 70s, that sort of thing. So when those books were submitted, the estimated turnaround time was 30 days. From the date that those books were physically delivered to CGC to when they were checked into the facility, that takes anywhere from 10 calendar days to 2 weeks. That time is not included in the turnaround time. So that's another important thing here, is that when your books are received by CGC, the clock that CGC is counting is when they're checked in. And usually when they're checked in, that's the same day your credit card is billed, but it's not the day that they're physically delivered. And as of right now, people are reporting to me that they are more than 3 calendar weeks behind on that check-in process, which is important because those are all books that are sitting there, which CGC could process in principle, but they are not, and clients are waiting for those books as part of the time. So when I mailed those books and when they were checked in and received by CGC, the estimated turnaround time was 30 days. And I will point out here that CGC's turnaround days are based on working business days. And so 5 days is a week there, right? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you skip Saturday and Sunday. So 30 days divided by 5 is about 6 weeks. You know, they should have been home by now for sure. During that process, then the time jumped from 30 days to 46 days. And, you know, their times fluctuate, and I know that they don't update their webpage every day, and that's okay. Yeah, it would be great if it was automated to get more of a real-time tracker, but going from 30 to 46 days is not that uncommon for CGC, especially in the summer when you have conventions. Now, that time then jumped to 64 days, or 62 days, somewhere in there. I've been posting on Instagram, so you can go through and follow some of that on there. That now was irritating, right? Because 30 days, 60-something, you're now double, and you're double while my books are sitting there. So I don't have any control over this, because that's another element of this whole thing that is very frustrating, is your books get mailed, they get checked into CGC. CGC bills your credit card when they're checked in. So now CGC has your comic books and hit your money, right? They've already hit the bill button on that. So it went from 60 days, start of November now, they started to skyrocket. All of a sudden it was 84 days, and then all of a sudden now it's up to 115 days. So, you know, just for simplicity, we could do some rough math here. Let's round 115 to 120, because realistically, let's say you're going to be late. Drop the 0, that would be 12, double it because there's 5 days per week. That would be about 24 weeks. You're literally looking at about 6 months. And that to me is absurd. The other thing that's absurd about it is that, again, is working days. So over, let's say, a Thanksgiving holiday break, and rightfully so, CGC employees should get the day off like everybody else. Comic book grading isn't exactly an essential service. I don't mind those people taking time off, but that time does not count against the turnaround time. So I think that's a problem. You know, coming around with Christmas and New Year's, those are going to be extra days. You're going to have, you know, Martin Luther King Day, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those days, I'm figuring these books aren't going to come back to me until May. And I personally find that very frustrating. And so as a community member, I don't think as a comic book presser, I could get away promising somebody a 2 to 3 week turnaround time, and then when I got their books, sending it back to them in 6 months. I have a feeling I would have angry clients who are looking to call me out on Facebook. They're probably going to call me out on Instagram. They're going to tag me in nasty posts. They're going to share whatever on different boards. It is okay if I tell people I'm not going to get your books back for 6 months, and I indeed get them back in 6 months, but I think it's really, really poor to have an experience where you mail those books assuming that they'll get back to you in a certain time, and it turns out that time is nowhere near accurate. I think the community overall had much more tolerance over the COVID pandemic, and yeah, turnaround times were nuts. The collectible market was skyrocketing. It made sense that there wasn't volume. In this particular case, we were promised a long time ago CGC was going to scale up to keep demand where it was, and that clearly has not happened. In addition to that, I have some frustrations with the Signature Series program. So obviously I'm a huge fan of doing the CGC signatures. You know, that one's quite cool. We've got other ones here. I've showcased a bunch of them during unboxing videos. You know, the X-Men series is just genuinely epic that I love up there. But it's happened to me multiple times now where CGC will promote a Signature Series signing event. They'll post a deadline. I'll get my books in well in advance of the deadline. My credit card will be billed for that again when the books are received by CGC, not when the actual event happens. And then it's crickets, and it's crickets for a very long time. So during the pandemic, the Three Jokers came out, and you know, Fabak, Johns, and Anderson were the three creators of that, the writer, the artist, and the inker and colorist. And so that was one of those kind of pandemic ones, but that book was out of my possession for over a year while they were waiting for one of the artists to have it happen. During the you know, launch of the YouTube channel here, I put up a video on how I pack my comic books and how I make window bags. And as part of that, I had a copy of X-Men the movie with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine on the cover with the claws fully extended, and CGC had advertised a Hugh Jackman signing, and I mailed that book away. It was going to be $500 to have Hugh Jackman sign the comic book, which is honestly kind of an insane amount of money for a signature, but I figured, what the heck, he's Hugh Jackman. He's one of the only superhero actors who've been the same character really throughout my entire life, going all the way back to the 2000 X-Men series and carrying into 2024 Deadpool. So I mean, that's a massive, essentially 2.5 decade career playing the same character, and who doesn't love Wolverine as a really iconic member of the X-Men team? And so I figured, what the heck, I'll pay for it. It'll be awesome. You know, I had the claws, the photo cover ready. You know, I was hoping he'd sign it, "You Suck, Ryan," you know, right on the cover. And it called after a year, called after 13 months, called after 15 months. It got to a year and a half when the Signature Series department finally agreed to issue refunds for that particular signing. And I took the refund, and that was it. So it took 18 months where they had my $500+ sitting there, and there was no signing event. And that to me was particularly frustrating as a fan. You know, I think we all understand celebrities are people too, and they have contracts and obligations, but I would hope we would also understand that a CGC signature signing department would have a structure in place to make sure that if they're promising customers the signing event, that they actually can deliver and follow through on it. And so to me, strike one was the John Svebach Anderson that took over a year to get going. Strike number two was the Hugh Jackman signing, which I now have been refunded for, but it took an insane amount of time for that actually to happen. 18 months is a long time. That's beyond being able to contest anything on your credit card. And so it's very frustrating as a customer to have that much money outstanding for that period of time with no end in sight. It wasn't like they were promising it was going to be there the next week or anything. It was just Okay, so strike number three now is the Stan Sakai signing. So I'm a huge Usagi Yojimbo fan, Usagi Yojimbo. I have thankfully a couple of really cool pieces from Stan Sakai. CGC posted a Stan Sakai signing. Again, Stan does events all over the world, and he's a world-class comic book creator, artist. He's a complete wizard if you get the good fortune to see him in person. They advertised a signing event all the way back in July. I mailed the books. The original cutoff was supposed to be August. They extended the deadline. As of last week, so mid-November, I had an interaction with the CGC representative who could confirm for me there's not even a date yet set on the calendar for when Stan's going to come in and to do that. So the sketch covers were more than $400 a piece. So we're looking at, you know, the better part of $1,000 roughly there too, if you throw in the invoice fee, the shipping, etc., to do a couple of sketch covers. I've recorded that video. I really genuinely hope I will be able to share with you not only what the ideas were, but how they appeared. And I actually did a really cool thing of watching how I selected which books got sent as well. And so I was hoping to be able to share that with the community. But just so that we're aware of this, they put that out in January, or sorry, not January, July. So you got July, August, September, October, November. So we're 4 months in since that announcement was made, and it's still not even scheduled for when he's going to be there to do the signing. Again, I know Stan's a person. He's got deadlines for the other work he does. He has other commitments to go to conventions. I'm not hard on him necessarily for not being able to teleport there and do the signing. What I am frustrated with, though, is that CGC has my books. They have my money. They made a promise to me as a customer, and I'm sure eventually that'll happen, but I think it's kind of inappropriate to not really have that pinned down, or even a calendar hold, so that you could tell me when it could happen over, you know, multiple months. Honestly, it shouldn't take that much time to book somebody. They either have time to come and do a signing event or they don't, and if they do have the time, hopefully that's on the calendar and they can make it happen. If they don't have it, then you shouldn't have the event, and you should, you know, cancel it and refund everybody's money. And again, I know that people are people and things can happen, so, you know, there could be a change in a family situation, there could be whatever, but I do think it is inappropriate to have that level of resources from people where you have their books, you have their money, and you don't have a timetable or really anything other than kind of a pipe dream issued for when this could happen. And I know that that comes out as harsh, but again, it is not the first time I've had this experience with CGC Signature Series. That was strike number one. The Hugh Jackman that never happened was strike number two. It took over 1.5 years before that money was refunded. And at the moment, the Stan Sakai signing is strike number three. So just to get this rant all boxed up here, I would say as a fairly loyal CGC customer whose hobby is improving other people's books so that they can send them to CGC, so don't think I'm just being grouchy here. It's actually self-defeating for me to take cheap shots at CGC because my hobby is dependent on other people wanting CGC books. But over the last year, we had Reholder Gate, Fake 99 Gate, CGC suffered multiple losses of lawsuit. We have Banana Gate, which they still have not fixed. We have exploding exponentially turnaround times that somehow I can't imagine how you don't know that there's pallets of comic books piling up and your turnaround time is actually getting that slow. I mean, if it goes from 30 days to 115 days in like a couple of weeks for books that were checked in August, you'd think somebody would be worried about the whole warehouse full of comic books that have just been hanging out for the last couple of months. So logistically, I don't know how that is so bad. And it's not like it's rocket science, right? They know how many books come in every day because they scan those into the system and they bill people's credit cards the day they're checked in. So you should be able to know books leaving per day, books in possession and books scanned in and project out with, I don't know, some level of competence, because there's a massive difference between a 30-day turnaround time and a 115-day turnaround time. Like, those are fivefold off. I just don't understand how you can be that far off and expect nobody to care. So as a customer, after this last year at CGC, I'm going to ask you all to welcome PSA with open arms and actually try PSA comic book grading when they launch. Hopefully they'll do a good job with it. Hopefully they will garner the reputation that they currently have with trading cards, and hopefully that will actually put some pressure on CGC to fix what I believe are actually honest grievances. Like, I don't think it should take 1.5 years before you can actually get a refund from a signing event that never happened. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that comic books at least have some reasonable time frame for a turnaround. And so, yeah, I also wish that they would say something about the banana books that people keep getting back, and they haven't fixed that. So the last couple of slabs I've gotten back have the exact same distorted feel. They're not as warped as the one in my prior video, but they're pretty wrecked from the standpoint of just feeling off. And again, I've dealt with CGC slabs for a long time. I can tell you that they don't feel right. So anyway, I hope PSA does it right when they launch their comic books, and I hope the community honestly gives CBCS a little bit more credit. I don't send enough to CBCS because some percentage of what I slab I resell, and unfortunately it's true today that CBCS does not garner the same price on the secondary market as CGC. I personally do not understand why that is, and so I'm going to try to challenge the status quo here and ask you all to give CBCS a little bit more of a fair shake. Hopefully they've fixed their customer service. For a while, their customer service was pretty bad. All right, that was a rant. I'm sorry for the rant, but hopefully it at least made some sense. Hopefully CGC can figure out why their turnaround times are so bad, and hopefully they can have a little bit more accountability for their signature series department, and hopefully they fix their Banana Gate problem. Other than that, hopefully you at least enjoyed a little bit of the rant. I'll try to drop as many links down into the description as I can. Hopefully you can give the video a thumbs up, shoot it out, share it to somebody. Find me on Facebook or Instagram, and thank you for paying attention for the last 20 minutes.